At the moment, I think most of our customers are obviously working out what they're going to have to deal with and the plans to deal with that. And I think at the moment that's that's a huge challenge. I think and therefore things for us will get quiet during that period, because as long as we do what we're there to do and that they can rely on us, then they can get on with doing what they have to do.
Right.
I think and at an acute time, that's what you need to let them do. I think and I don't know how this call is going to unfold, but I suspect one of the things we might be looking at is once they get through that peak crisis, what can people like us do to help? And there may be some stuff we can do during the peak crisis as well, but I think it's going to be an immediate and a longer term thought process.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you and echo all of that. And I don't know how this call is going to go either. We've got quite an audience, actually, quite a group gathered, and it should be a good discussion. We've got 1 hour. So welcome everybody. Good morning. I was just saying to Nic Streatfeild from ROL, who's joined us kindly today, that it's a beautiful morning today. So life is always a little bit better when the sun is shining. So this is an ideas discussion call. What the structure I thought we would have is just a very quick context setting from me, maybe just 10 minutes. And I've got some slides just to make sure I don't go off the track. Then I thought I'd just introduce a few folks and ask them what their experiences are, and then we'll just open conversation and do some ideas gathering. Just want to make sure we stay focused on that. What we're particularly interested in is any anecdotes for what you're hearing in inside your customers, what their challenges are, specifically what their challenges are. And it changes on a day-to-day basis, and I'll definitely sort of show you some examples of that, about what we're seeing at Jadu. So agenda-wise, what we're doing, we'll gather the sentiment and feedback from customers and establish some kind of group communication, so this conversation can continue online. If you can load up this link, Kirstine is going to just publish this in the chat window. What we thought we'd do is, because there's so many of us on the call today, we thought we would just pop up an online surveying tool. It's really simple. It's specifically designed to capture those anecdotes that you're hearing from your customers. What are their challenges? What are they asking us to do? What are you seeing that they are doing? And it's more about listening to what our local authorities, and in some cases higher education organisations, are facing. So our approach at Jadu, this is about leveraging our community. So what we're trying to achieve is, just for clarity, is an understanding of what we can do specifically, what we can focus on to get as good as we can and ship to our customers. So these could be community support forms, they could be business support forms, tackling the homeless challenge, finding services to help, like food delivery parcels. So this came from Birmingham City Council. They wanted to launch a service that helped the delivery of food parcels. Just going to quit this and show you something that we found this morning that Birmingham have done. They've got a form up that is asking the public, or businesses actually specifically, to donate PPE. So this is an example of where actually some of these just-in-time forms and interactions and services can be life-saving. Obviously, there's the number one hot topic at the moment. And Birmingham very much at the epicenter of a lot of this, because whereas in London you've got multiple local authorities supporting the city, in Birmingham you've got one. So just a typical example of the kind of thing that we're talking about, where we can be just in time too. How can we get this stuff out fast in a sensible and reusable way? So the two things that we've done so far, and again I'd just like to thank our partners here. We last year, Methods said, wouldn't it be great if we built a library? So we did that. We launched a library of common standards, and that's starting to become a model. A lot of vendors in our market now are doing the same thing, and I applaud them for, for doing that as well. We're starting to see a lot more starting to speed up this kind of activity now, and it's great because it means that anyone using a digital platform can easily download and reuse assets that other customers have invested in. What we're going to do is we're going to be the agents who basically look at all the assets that get created and put them up, quickly rationalize them, genericize them, put them up on the library so people can download them. But we also want to build community. So we've just starting to do customer podcasts, customer and partner podcasts. We're planning to do one every couple of weeks, maybe. That's going to be up on this page. We also want to hold webinars with partners and with customers together. And we want to try and highlight best practices. So things to broadcast, how we can keep up to date. And we want to keep this page constantly evolving. We're calling this the toolbox, a place where it doesn't really matter who's done it or what technology they're using. We can all just put it in one place here, and people can then use that as a destination if they want to. There's nothing to see here yet. We spun up this idea came from Methods, who are on the call today, and we'll ask them to tell us their experience in a minute. But as you can see, this is a blank website at the moment. It's being designed right now. So we're building a community portal, going to remove our branding, just put something generic up. And again, it's part of the toolbox, but we want to be able to launch forms from here. And perhaps Paul Greenhead, you're on the call today. You can tell us in a minute about what you're doing in that area and why you asked us to spin up this platform. So it's about really trying to get, that's one of the tools in our toolbox. We want to try and get as many tools out as possible, and we only know what we know. It's probably also worth mentioning that part of the reasoning behind setting up this call was when we first started provisioning that portal late last week and early this week, we came across our first challenge was that we didn't have any central sort of address data. So we could actually build a generic form that a local authority could use and route it to the right place. So a customer comes along and starts filling in the form, says, well, actually, I live in Birmingham. That service request then needs to go to Birmingham, and we didn't have any address data. So we called our colleagues up at Aligned Assets, Dinesh, who I think might be on the call today, and they've donated their single point address data lookup service. So that has been now integrated into this portal that we're building. So we now have addressable data, reliable national land and property gazetteer and local land and property gazetteer data available to us, which has been amazing. And I'd just like to applaud Dinesh and his team for doing that. Before we start discussion, I just wanted to, I'll just quit the slide deck. I just wanted to also say that I think we've got 3 Jadu customers on the call as well. So Lincolnshire, Pendle and Stoke. If you're on the call today, please just wave, say hello.
Hello. Yes, we're on the call. Stoke.
Hi, John. Good to see you.
Hi. How are you?
Very good, thank you. We'd love to hear from you as well. So, as far as we're concerned, open conversation. We've also got our colleagues from the local, from the LGAQ, Local Government Association of Queensland. It's about 7 in the evening in Queensland, so I can see you're online, Brett and Glenn. Can you say hello as well?
Hello, Siraj. How are you?
I'm very good. It's really good to hear your voice, Brett.
G'day,
If you're keeping well.
Good day, guys. So really interested to hear about what the challenges are that councils are facing in on the other side of the world with our cousins in Australia. So we're going to hear from LGAQ, if that's okay, guys. If you've got nothing prepared, don't worry. We're just interested to hear what's happening. We've also got representatives from CGI, from Methods, from Sopra Steria, ROL, Nic, who you heard from earlier, Bartec, Hyland, Northgate, Cludo, Pitney Bowes / SyncSort, Blue Prism, and Aligned Assets. If there's anyone I've missed off, please wave and say so. and Kirstine is keeping an eye on the chat window as well. So I guess that's enough from me, really. And what I'd like to do is just ask Paul Greenhead first. Paul, would you mind just breaking the ice and telling us what you're doing, what your ideas are, and what progress you're making, what you're seeing in the customer base, and what you think?
Sure. No, happy to. Hello, everybody. Nice to kind of meet you all remotely. So in terms of what we're doing, we've got obviously reached out to customers that we're already working with or worked with recently. I think the difficulty is not wanting to kind of, I guess, mob them in terms of ideas and suggestions, and kind of taking a kind of a more sort of pragmatic sort of view in terms of how can we help without sort of being seen to be kind of pushing sort of too much. So we've touched base with customers to understand what they're doing. A lot of our customers are existing Jadu customers as well, so they're kind of busily building out sort of forms. So I think there's an opportunity there to share some more of those things that are being developed in response by local authorities with other local authorities. But I suppose the idea that we had that Suraj has referenced already was about how can you provide some support to perhaps some of those smaller local authorities who don't have either the capability or the capacity or even the tools. And that was the idea behind what Suraj has described as the portal. So could we kind of build out some relatively simple forms quite quickly, which could then be made available on local authority websites, just to help them kind of capture information in a more structured way? It's almost like a kind of a fire and forget XFP form, which would just give them a better chance of kind of understanding who wants to volunteer or where the need is in their particular community. So that was the thinking behind that approach. And it was great that Suraj and the team kind of picked that one up and have started to put the steps in place to make that available. But really, we're just sort of having conversations. We've done a bit of work to help some customers kind of connect up their Jadu forms with Power BI, so they can get a kind of a more of a structured understanding of how that data could be used to kind of monitor the situation. So with one of the councils we work with, that's been focused on sort of volunteers, but also internal resources. So what sorts of skills and kind of experience do their internal workforce have? What kind of vulnerabilities are they exposed to? Are they self-isolating? Do they have people in their homes or in their families who are at a higher risk or a higher degree of vulnerability? And how do they then sort of take that data and use that to redeploy staff to do the things that are needed as a result of some of the workforce being impacted? So that's kind of a flavour of kind of what we're sort of hearing in the conversations we've been having.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, that's immensely valuable. The two things that I guess to spotlight there, the portal that we're building, absolutely. This isn't just about local authorities who have digital platforms. This is moreover those who are disenfranchised and don't.
Suraj, it might just be worth bringing Nic in. He's just typed into the chat, I'm involved in our local vulnerable people food delivery and fulfilment service, so I can chip on that. And he's also said that community volunteer coordination is a real challenge.
Nic, can you tell us more about that?
Yes, sorry, just I've been on so many video conferencing systems over the last few weeks. I can never remember which button goes where. So, so yes, on if I take the second one first, so the community volunteer coordination is going to be a real challenge for local authorities. For those that don't know ROL, our roots, and ROL stands for Rutland Online. It's a funny little place in the middle of England, but in the mid-90s we set up a community portal which actually ran for about 15 years, and one of the real challenges was, the purpose of the portal was to empower and bring into one place online community dialogue, online community services, business services, etc., etc. But the real challenge was in terms of monitoring these self-publishers. So, a problem that subsequently, the likes of Facebook have encountered, etc. What I've noticed in Rutland, which is obviously now, the go-to platform for community voice, is the likes of Facebook and Twitter. There's such an outpouring of goodwill at the moment from the community wanting to help, but You know, when you go onto the various local groups in Facebook, they aren't coordinated in any way, and they aren't policed in any way, and quite often they can then become, you know, you can see stress and friction starting to evolve, and the risk is that some very well-intentioned people go into that type of environment and see that actually, no, this is not the sort of place I want to be involved with. So my personal thought is that there is a real role for councils to play here in terms of community volunteer coordination. If I continue to use Rutland as an example, in Rutland we have a voluntary action, VAR, Voluntary Action Rutland, which is the local third sector coordinating body. But unfortunately, most people working there or volunteering there are in the vulnerable category that now needs to be very careful about how they self-isolate. So at a time when you would lean on those sorts of organisations, and the council would want to lean on that sort of organisation, they are at the same time becoming very thin on the ground. So, and as Suraj and I were just discussing at the very, you know, whilst we were waiting to come into the call, at the moment, you know, the sector as a whole is trying to work out how it's going to deal with these acute challenges, and community volunteer coordination probably isn't getting to the top of the list. But if we're moving into a program here that could be 6, 9, 12 months long, and we know that certainly will be the case for some of the most vulnerable people, then you know, sooner rather than later, those of us that can need to start planning what we could bring to help with that, because there are all of the challenges of managing online community forums and quality assurance, and then systemically dovetailing that into publicly funded programs that, of course, the councils will be running. So I think this is you know, we'll be in a different place at the end of COVID. You know, we'll have moved forward several years in terms of digital adoption. We'll also, I think, in the UK, and I'm sure this is, you know, I'm an ex-Australia resident myself, so I know the same vibe will be going on over there. You know, we'll be in a position where we have much stronger stakeholding in public service provision, and I think there's a real opportunity to develop you know, quality volunteer platforms that can be QA'd and best deploy the assets locally. So I think the whole community volunteer thing is a big problem at the moment, and it's something people like us should be looking to see how we could help.
Thanks, Nick. I mean, that's a really good I mean, really important points. Really good segue into perhaps, I'd like to first ask Stoke, John Barker, to hear what you're doing. I'd like to then ask Chris Chubb at Sopra Steria to hear what Broxbourne are doing. And then I'd really like to drill more into detail from you, Glenn, about what's happening in Australia. So can we start with John Barker first? John, I hope you don't mind it piping in, but it'd be really interested to hear what's happening with supporting the vulnerable in Stoke.
Yeah, we've actually been very, very lucky and fortunate, really, with the help that we're getting from the community and from volunteers. So we've been busy setting up the community hubs as per the guidance, the government guidance, but we've had a lot of help from local football clubs, from Port Vale for one, based up in Burslem, and from JCB, one of the local manufacturers, which have been really, really helpful. So as I say, we've been setting hubs as per the guidance, but Port Vale have set their own hub up, which is supporting vulnerable. JCB are providing somewhere in the region of 400 meals a day, and they are going to the homeless and most vulnerable first. Our hub, which is both proactive and reactive, we're getting food parcels out daily, contacting residents to understand whether they're in a position where they do need help or whether they're okay at the moment. And then those that do need the help, getting food parcels out and repairs and dog walking and prescriptions are starting to come into that mix as well at the moment. So we're not in too bad a position because a lot of people have stepped up pretty quick to the request, and some major help there from the likes of JCB and the local football clubs as well, which has been really fortunate. We've from our own portal perspective, we've managed to move some staff around, reallocate some staff from our Unitas housing provision. So we're using their vans and their staff to deliver the food parcel, because it was an ideal situation because they were they'd already got the vehicles, they'd already got the infrastructure, they got the software to do the resource planning, and they got the staff to get the food out. So there's some really good coordination going on from the management level. A couple of the ADs that I work with and the directors are doing a great job on that at the moment. So we're not too bad from a volunteer and a community perspective at the minute, and it's a challenge, and I think the longer this goes on, the greater that challenge is going to be, especially if some of those volunteers start to get symptoms, and some of the staff we're relying on that have been reallocated, start to get symptoms. It could become more of a challenge from a staffing perspective. But there's lots of good work going on around workforce planning to understand what skills other staff have that could be redeployed, and sort of daily status updates on who's available working from home, who is deployable, who's non-deployable because they fall into vulnerable groups, that kind of work. So there's lots of links with HR and learning and development team as well to monitor the availability of staff and get an assessment of skill sets. So if we do need to deploy quickly, we can. So at the moment, not too bad. It's been a challenge. It's been lots of late nights as an organisation, I think, getting everything set up. But as we speak, we're not in too bad a position at the moment, but I don't doubt it's not going to get more challenging. It is going to get more challenging as the weeks go on, I suspect.
Thank you, John. I mean, in terms of immediate and next challenges, what are you seeing? I mean, you've got a community of your main suppliers on a call here. Very quickly, what are the top things, the one or two top things that we could be doing to help you? We start from a quite a fortunate position because we'd established quite a decent, thanks to you guys and methods as well, quite a decent digital platform in advance of this starting. So from a forms perspective, the demand's been quite light at the moment because we've got the app, we've got ways of getting push notifications out there. There's about 10,000 on that now. There's a lot of forms live because we've done the push for the transition from Lagan at the time in advance, quite luckily. So we've really only had a push for about 2 forms at the moment. One was the business rates grants form, which there's a lot of demand for that. I think we've had just over 1,200 in the first 2 days using that form. I think we're expecting about 5,000 is the potential audience for that one. And one that was actually pulled yesterday, but we thought we were going to have to stand a form up for people to pay fines that were not adhering to the COVID guidelines when police were issuing penalties. But they've decided now that they're going to deal with that on a national basis. They're going to deal with the fines and the payments. The police themselves are. So the development for that was pulled yesterday. We haven't had to do that. So at the moment, we've only had to stand up one additional form, which have sent a link to Yelena to put into the library. If anybody wants to use that, they're more than welcome. It's there, it's working, it's in operation, it's all specced out and it's live. So feel free if anybody wants to use that. So at the moment, the pressure from a forms perspective isn't coming my way, mainly due to a lot of luck. I suspect that we'd got a really good platform up and running in advance of this starting, and like I said, we've got the app out there which we can directly communicate with around 10,000 residents straight away.
Again, that could very well change very quickly, because I get a daily update call from Goal Command around about midday every day. So it is a day by day sort of monitoring of the situation of the demand that may come in. But anything that does come, I'm more than happy for you guys to put in the library and share with other councils. That's
fantastic.
Pleasure to do that. So I'll just keep, as they come, as soon as we spec them, I'll just send the links over to go, and anybody who wants to use them, they can.
John, thank you very much, and please thank your teams for the tremendous efforts that you're putting in. Also, likewise for the other authorities that are on this call today. That's a nice segue into Chris. Chris Chubb has been working with Sopra Steria, and has been working very closely supporting Broxbourne Borough Council. Broxbourne were the first local authority to send us forms. So Chris?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So good morning, everyone. Like Nick, I'm a Teams user, so I'm learning where all the buttons are as well on Zoom. So hopefully you can all hear me. Yeah, absolutely. So I think I think Broxbourne, we're in a kind of fortunate position in that it's still a live project. So we still have the people there who can rapidly respond to any kind of requests that are coming in. And what we've tried to do. Excuse me if you can hear my children outside the door. I will shoo them away if they come in, but I really apologise that there are 3 under 8s out there. But what we've tried to do is, I think exactly as Paul said, is we try not to kind of badger them, but we're trying to look at where the pinch points are within the organisation, and then come up with a solution that is kind of quite low intensity in terms of whatever training might be required on CXM or something like that. And then go and implement it very quickly. What we have done as a result of that, so we do have these daily calls with Broxbourne to just talk through what we're trying to do. And actually, on top of the forms, what we have tried to do with our copywriter is to kind of create language that's really simple to understand, so people understand the problems, and it's written in that language that, you know, that all the is accessible to people as well. So we try to do that, as well as creating super simple forms. The forms that have been created, and we're happy to share them. We've got 2 more going live, I think today and tomorrow. One is a change in circumstance, and the other one is a upload evidence form. And as soon as those are live, I'm happy to share them with anybody. Is that we've relaxed our design principles, in that usually we're very strict on design and making sure the data is perfect and there are no mistakes that could possibly be made. But in terms of getting stuff out quickly and making sure we can get testing and release done, we've just kind of relaxed all of that, knowing that at some point we're going to go back and fix, you know, some of these critical pinch points. But it's more important that we kind of get something out that collects the data in reasonably the right way than it is getting something perfect that we would normally aim for in 3 weeks' time, when we've missed that hump. And Revs and Bens, for example, are just being swamped by calls. I think on Friday the business grant form went out, or the business grant letter from Broxbourne, and I think we had a day to kind of get that done, tested and out, because we knew there was going to be a massive hump of phone calls on Monday from businesses that are trying to apply for that grant. And that's why we're just kind of taking those decisions that are absolutely necessary about relaxing our rules a little bit, or the council's rules on design and what's the best way to do things. But what we are absolutely doing is keeping our copy and the language we're using really simple, to make sure people can understand that. And actually, our copywriter actually now has direct release onto the site, which he didn't have before. But because there's so much new content going up all the time, we've kind of given him those permissions. But I think we, like everybody else, we're just looking for ways that we can help. And it's really great that Broxbourne said we can share all the stuff, share anything we create. We're happy to give out and work collaboratively with anybody who's got ideas on what they can do. And I think I saw, Paul, you just replied to that map that we put on. Great, yeah, that's a really good idea. I hadn't thought of it, that you could. There's a map that came from Westminster, I think Westminster Council, where there's a list of local amenities where you can get support. And actually, it's a great idea. People could submit their own, and then it could be moderated and put on the map. So it's about user-generated content as well. that's a really great idea. I think that's something that we definitely want to suggest to the council that we could get running. But I think we're just trying to balance it as best we can, supporting our colleagues in the council who are just under an enormous amount of stress at the moment, and just do the best we can for them.
Thank you, Chris. I mean, I've pulled out two really good points there. Firstly, the amount of stress that our colleagues and friends inside our customer base are under. I mean, you can't discount that. And, you know, something that in our weekly all hands at Jadu, we're very determined to do is make sure that our ear is an empathetic one, you know, and that we're there supporting in the background and we don't create any noise. So that's really key to us, is that as a supplier, we don't want to be the problem. The other thing is, I think I really sort of honed in on is that this idea of user-generated content, because crowdsourcing ideas from members of the public and the communities, and not just on ideas, but the challenges that they're facing, because there are lots of community leaders out there who are really proactive in getting things done, and are really just, you know, skipping the whole discussion thing and going straight into help. So, and it's things like that that really are key. I'm really interested to hear from you, Glenn, because we've got our cousins, brothers and friends in Australia who specifically on the call in Queensland, and you see these challenges over a wide number of councils in different geographies in the state. Can you tell us a bit more about what's going on over there and how you're handling things?
Yeah, g'day, Suraj. Thanks so much. And firstly, just thanks so much to Jadu for putting on this today. I think it's a great demonstration of leadership, and for that we're most grateful. Certainly, you know, here in Australia, our circumstances are following, I suppose, in the same extent as the UK's, and our councils, like the local authorities over there, are responding as best they can. And I might actually throw to Brett, who'll give you a quick update on what we're doing here.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Okay, so for those that don't know the LGAQ, we are a Jadu partner, and we deploy Jadu Galaxies to more than 40 councils or local authorities, if you will, here in the state of Queensland, which is on the east coast of Australia. For us here, local governments have key responsibilities around disaster management, and this is obviously at this time, this is very much a scenario which is being managed like a cyclone or a flood or any other natural disaster. As you would be well aware, we have so much information at this point being directed to both individuals and also organisations, which is not only changing daily, but also subject to different understanding based on interpretation. We sit here most nights waiting on the Prime Minister deciding what measures from that point onwards in these times are needed. And I think pragmatic assistance and knowing where we can play our part is really important. So I guess our thoughts were that if we could utilise our staff to manage and contextualise those important messages coming from the federal government and then down to the state government, remembering that we have three levels of government here, that would allow local government and our councils to focus on what they control, which is local programs, services, facilities such as libraries, pools, community centres, and thinking about how they manage such facilities and programs during this time, and also thinking about, as that information is presented to them from higher levels of government, how that will impact their operations. So just really pragmatically, we've created a COVID-19 widget, which is being updated by the LGAQ. It contains vital information relating back to our state health authority and also the federal government. And then that's made available to all councils who are members of the LGAQ, and they can deploy that widget locally and host that on their website. And they can have comfort in knowing that that information is kept up to date, it's accurate, and it's also able to be further contextualized by adding local information beneath that. I think at this stage we have between 5 to 10 councils using that widget, but that's growing. Furthermore, utilizing the Jadu platform, we've been able to use XFP to garner some really great results or great outcomes in terms of managing intake for our Indigenous communities. So For those that you don't know, Aboriginal Australia is a big part of the LGAQ's membership. In the last week, there's been sanctions placed on entering Indigenous communities. And for those of you that are not familiar with these remote parts of Australia, the health conditions in these communities is particularly acute. And being also remote, they don't have necessarily the sufficient resources or facilities to cope well should the coronavirus enter into these places. So we've tried to utilise XFP to manage the intake of essential workers into that part of Australia and allow permits to be facilitated through the XFP modules. So that's been very, very well received by the CEOs of those particular councils, just allowing them to focus on the ground logistics and not having to worry about how they think about managing additional responsibilities during extraordinary times. And the good thing about utilising Jadu and the good thing about the model that we have is that these resources we can share. They're very Queensland specific, but it's a great example of how the effort of one can be to the benefit of many. And I'm very, very pleased that we can help in any way which we can at this particular time. Thanks,
Brett. I mean, that's immensely valuable. I think one thing that does underscore that the challenge is similar but very different, if that makes any sense. And it's interesting to hear that things are being managed on a central level in Australia. The idea that you guys are reacting to the situation in real time is very real over here as well. We get the daily announcements from government as well. For example, last week, all local authorities were told that they need to house the homeless. So we're really keen to understand how local authorities are coping with that and what we can do to enable digital service there. The changing situation in real time is the one thing I'm absolutely focused on. It's being able to listen and hear what our customers, what challenges that they're going through and understand. So the form that you saw for PPE collection, for donations from business for protective equipment, I found that this morning, and it was a tweet from Birmingham City. So it's understanding and listening and making sure that we can react, because Birmingham don't have time. None of our customers have time to design something, build something, put it out there, manage it, and then, by the way, tell us, what they've done. So we need to be in super listening mode when it comes to understanding, who's doing what and when, how we can share that best practice. So it sounds like you guys in the LGAQ are doing exactly the same thing there. I think what I'd like to do is just open up the room a little bit and just ask a few. I think Sarah at Pitney Bowes / SyncSort, you mentioned that you were doing something.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everybody, and echo the sentiment to thank Jadu for bringing us together. We found straight away that in a time of obviously massive change and increased concern, the organisations we were working with received massive amounts of contact, much more than usual. In turn, the employees available to receive that contact were diminishing. One of our organisations we work with in just 1 week went from 44 people available in the contact centre down to 1 due to sickness and isolation, and their average handle time went from 8 seconds to 12 minutes, and they were struggling massively with SLAs that they have to meet. The information that was available was clearly insufficient for their customers, and they had great concerns, particularly for vulnerable groups. We swung into action very quickly from a digital perspective, and we found that we've been able to provide a digital front for our customers so that their customers can get information quickly. In a time of fear, uncertainty and doubt, information is seemingly what everybody needs, and they need it quickly. So within 4 or 5 days, we were able to stand up a chatbot for this particular customer. We scraped their frequently asked questions within 1 day, and just made them available very quickly. And the beauty of the bot that we've provided is it's for business use. It does not warrant heavy IT involvement. It can be augmented and managed by that business user on an ongoing basis as well. And they were very appreciative of that. And we've subsequently found that a good few customers are wanting the same and wanting it quickly. The other thing that we've enabled is a template video that describes how we can keep safe during this time of COVID-19. And the video has been used both internally for their own organisation, and they're also starting to share it with their customers as well. It's a template video that we offer that we can support them to amend, put their own branding, etc. on. And that's helped alleviate some of the concerns within their own organisation and re-emphasise the key things that we need to be doing to keep safe. That those are things that I just wanted to share with you that we've been able to do very quickly, that people in their own homes, citizens wanting support. Where do I go for what? What can I expect now? Who's coming when? They can answer very quickly themselves 24/7 if we were to support the Jadu customers and enable that for them. I think it might help. There's some great references to forms for this, support for that, on some fantastic websites. But one of the main concerns, I think, for citizens is I get on the website, where do I go for what? And with a chat bot like that, you can ask the question, it can automatically pop up the page with the form for you to fill in and the information that you need. And if the chat is unable to answer the questions that the citizen is asking, it can escalate up to a live agent if somebody's available to support them and they need that help. So just a couple of small things that I wanted to share with you that we can provide very quickly for your organisations to give that element of comfort and support to the citizens out there that need it right now.
Thanks, Sarah. I mean, that's really interesting. And what I might do is reach out to you and Alex offline to talk to you about how maybe we could leverage some of that on this community portal that we're building.
Yeah, Suraj, I think I'd add to that. Absolutely. I'd add to that. We're having some discussions at the moment with some third sector people around food bank management. And particularly where we can help, where a local authority has an instance of Confirm already, which dozens of the UK ones do and Australian ones do, where can we start to look at doing something as a group, and enable them to look at using Confirm Connect to schedule the deliveries of food banks and allow people to have a device in the van. So, we've got people who we're finding that a lot of our customers who use our technology are moving to a single person in a cab, so that there's no, they're effectively isolated. That then puts that puts them in a vulnerable situation. So people are talking to us about actually we need more access to what we provide them so they can keep their people safe. They can deliver the service, but they can also keep the people who are safe, people who are delivering it safe. So it would be really be great to have a conversation with you guys around how we could look at standing that up in an environment where we've already got people. So if I look at Birmingham, right, we are doing huge amounts of work with Birmingham at the moment. You do a lot of work with Birmingham. We've got consultants virtually working there at the moment, having pulled out to keep everybody safe. And I think there's some a really great sort of impact we could have to help people in that third sector. And I can't remember who it was earlier that talked about, that the idea of people wanting to help and volunteering, and then that, the data that creates and how we help them manage the impact of that is going to be critical right now. 3 weeks later, it's too late, but right now, maybe we can do something. And then the other thing that we're looking at in the background is, can we develop some analytics around our systems, which we could push out to the market, which would allow people to say, okay, what do I need to do on my infrastructure in a week's time to minimise my insurance claims or my accident damage or these kind of things? You know, right at the moment, where absolutely everyone's focused on isolation, personal safety, and helping the NHS do what they need to do. But we've also got to have, you know, I think we can help at the top level there with some stuff, but the undercurrent stuff as well is how can we enable these authorities who all use our services to keep their kind of business as usual piece going underneath, Siraj? And what can we do? As you said, we need to listen, and we've started doing, you know, we're about to publish today a webinar that we've done, which is like a fireside chat, trying to answer our customers' questions. We've had heaps of questions come into our support line about what's happening with this, guys, what's happening with this, what's happening with this. So, you know, it may not be the perfect solution, but we decided to do a 4-way fireside chat recorded on Zoom, which we're going to push out to our LinkedIn page and to all our customers and to the market today, to try and answer their questions and just try and, you know, we're there for them. They can ask us anything they want. You know, we said in you can ask us anything you want. We can't help with homeschooling your kids and walking your dog, but you can ask us anything, and you know, the web's there, the phone's there, everything's there. So it's kind of what we're doing, and maybe we can have an offline chat about with you and some of the other partners who are here, about what we could do around Birmingham. We're looking at it in Peterborough, and obviously the Rutland one that was interesting earlier is we all have instances there where maybe we can leverage what they've already paid for and what they already own.
Thank you, Alex. We'll take that as an action, and we'll circle back around and look, we'll send a group-wide email later, and anyone who wants to join in that secondary conversation can. Sounds like that's very valuable. Can I just ask, there's a couple of really interesting points. Well, Glenn mentioned that we'll be soon transitioning from response to recovery, and that's an important one because, you know, whilst we're all looking at what's going on today, we've really got to start thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow, you know. So if we can come back to that point, that would be great. Can I ask Tim Hobbs, if you don't mind, just because you messaged a couple of things there, which I think are key to follow on from what Alex was saying. Could you elaborate as well?
Yeah, it's a pleasant change not to be the biggest public pain point, to be honest. It's usually when it snows, you know, everybody goes mental over bins, and it's been quite interesting for us to see that actually our customers have sort of carried on, and the sort of numbers we've got is our authorities have got sort of 50% of their crews absent at any one time. So, you know, they very quickly stood down garden waste and in some cases food waste services, which is actually relatively simple to do. You can just put a banner ad on your website and say, we're not collecting garden bins, and everyone understands what that means. But then that quickly sort of followed up into the distancing in the cabs, which I think Alex mentioned, which has really meant that, you know, the crews are not able to do what they would normally do because they've only got one loader, which is more difficult to design because actually councils don't know what the impact of that is because they've never actually tried to do a city centre route with one loader, because why would you? So they're having to respond, sort of have a guess at what the route should be, run it, see what happens, tweak it. And actually the normal tools that we would use for that sort of redesign, they're too big and cumbersome to actually do that. So it really is a sort of a highlighter pen and a fag packet sort of job. And, you know, it's really been, as I think everyone else has said, it's been a balancing act for us to sort of say to all our clients, we're still here, we're here to help. But actually, more important, we're going to keep out the bloody way until you actually ask us something. Don't assume that we're not here, because we are, but we're keeping out of the way. So we're seeing new use cases really for the system, certainly in terms of, you know, the way we do scheduling and do route redesign. But the biggest issue, I think, for all of this is actually communicating to residents. If I look down my street today, there are blue bins everywhere, and my council cancelled their blue bin service over a week ago. That's been on their website in big letters. And it's been amazing to me just how many people, and I live in an area that's, you know, relatively affluent and relatively, you know, you'd think clued into the internet and service use, and nobody's got a clue. The bins are all out. So it is quite clear to me that what we think of being quite simple in comms terms isn't. Those channels are not necessarily used. So I think, in the same way as everybody else, we're trying to strike a balance between being there and being out of the way, and also sort of just trying to respond to customers as they ask us questions rather than trying to impose great ideas upon them.
I think that's a really good point, Tim. The other really good point that you made is that you're looking at these new use cases that are emerging, and that is the beginning of the new business, the new normal that we'll be moving to. I can't imagine what the waste crews and the council's trying to organise the waste crews are going through right now. Every time I see our rubbish collected, I am so grateful that they're still doing that, and amazed that they're still doing it.
Yeah, I think maybe I'm cynical, but I think at the moment there's an enormous amount of public goodwill to all of these people. We see it most for the NHS, the emergency services, but I think that so far that has extended to the waste crews. We normally see a completely different picture. So if it snows, people are furious that the bin hasn't been collected, despite the fact that there's 3 foot of snow. It's like, and there's a different mood at the moment. What I'm not sure about is how that mood is going to persist over, the longer weeks that we're probably in for. I can see it sustaining for the emergency services and the NHS, but I think people are going to get rather irate about their garage being full of cardboard or whatever it is. So I think the communications piece is going to be very, very important.
Yes, and Chris has just made a really good point on the chat window. Jadu has a role to play here, and as does any provider of communications and customer service technology, and enabling those notifications. So that's definitely a conversation we need to continue. We are working with the Gov.uk Notify system, and maybe we just need to bump that up in priorities. Just a couple of points to make, because we are at the top of the hour now, a couple of minutes. I wanted to ask Northgate. I think we've got Matt Arnold on the line as well. Matt, you've probably seen in Northgate a huge increase in revenues and benefits demand. Can you tell us a bit more about that in the last couple of minutes?
Yeah, of course I will. Yeah, good morning, Suraj. Good morning, everyone. To say it's busy would be an understatement. So local authorities obviously receiving unprecedented number of new claims for support, but also we're supporting the wider changes in terms of software around business rates, council tax support and hardship payments. So a lot of our efforts, for those who don't know, we deliver a discretionary assistance fund for the Welsh Government. And the numbers there over the last few weeks in terms of applications have risen significantly. So probably 2 or 3-fold on what we would normally get. I think so at the moment, we're very busy in terms of supporting both software changes and the services that we provide. But in addition to that, somebody mentioned earlier, eventually we're going to come out the other side, and that's also going to require some significant planning and then reversal of changes that we've made and considerable ongoing support. So I think, it's going to be a long road. What we're certainly seeing is the way that local authorities are responding is really testament to them. Under very, very difficult circumstances, they, in the main, have managed to get people working from home very, very quickly, despite reductions in staff availability. And I think certainly what I've seen is a very, very positive response, and people working very, very well collaboratively across the board, really. So yeah, as you can imagine, supporting public health housing is a key area for us, and there's obviously some new legislation in the housing space that needs to be supported by software changes. We as an organisation don't want to push us as an organisation too much, but certainly in terms of the way our organisation has responded internally, I think has been exceptional, and that really has assisted us in then supporting customers, and that's really key. Is how we leverage our own capability to then support those customers. So yeah, very, very busy time. That's going to continue for the weeks and months ahead, and we will do obviously everything that we can to support the entire base really, and also very keen to continue working with partners and collaborating to ensure that we're able to leverage joint capability, because it's far and wide and doesn't just cover the services and software that we currently provide, but also how various suppliers can integrate their own capability to provide solutions to what is a new problem. And I think we'll see a lot more of that collaboration over, as I say, the weeks and months ahead.
Thank you, Matt. That was golden. I mean, that leveraging of capability is what we've all been singing that from that hymn sheet for a long time, and I think now is a chance for us to prove it. You know, how we can support those customers without getting in their way and delivering the services that they need in this rapidly changing environment. Dinesh, you asked a really interesting question. Can I just give you a couple of minutes to just articulate that?
Yes. So what we've found is that that the council's authority being acting as a hub to try and coordinate action, as we've heard, and they're getting different data sets from the NHS in terms of the Exeter data set, vulnerable people registers from the emergency services, and they're effectively trying to combine the data sets to have a superset of vulnerable people, which is then they can then coordinate their services too. And I think what some of the council are saying is that the reliance on people to self-register is, yes, it depends on who they are. Some people will not be IT literate, especially the older members of the community. So they're trying to proactively find out who is vulnerable and then coordinate, and then that sort of thing can then also be used geospatially if you have a volunteer group that's operating in a specific area, then to do some sort of geospatial analysis of the vulnerable people in their area then becomes a sensible thing. So a very targeted response geographically. So we're trying to work out, is there a simple, easy way of enabling that to happen?
That's a really good point, Dinesh, and I think that is probably the subject of a conversation on its own, you know, because there's a definite service design problem there that no one, as far as I can see, at central or local level has really cracked. I just want to say thank you. Have a good morning, everybody. Have a good day today. Everyone stay safe, stay at home, and we will talk to you very soon.